You are listening to the Composing Trust podcast by Culture Solutions, a series on European cultural action with the world. Is Europe still attractive? How is it perceived outside the EU? How do Europeans promote culture together in the world and with which partners? What have they learned together? What is their experience? Our Composing Trust podcast series will address these issues. Welcome to you all. My name is Damien Helly, the co-author of this Composing Trust series by Culture Solutions.
We are developing a podcast on bilateral relations between the EU and Turkey. The objective of this series is really to develop a podcast community of practice interested in sharing know-how on international cultural relations with the EU and Europeans. Turkey has had for several decades the status of candidate to the EU. This has allowed bilateral relations to develop, including in the cultural field, even with some cooperation with the European capitals of culture. At the same time, in the last 20 years, relations have become more tense and complicated, with the management of migration flows, for instance, or issues around political dialogue on human rights, etc. This, however, has not prevented cultural professionals to continue their cooperation work, and that is what we will talk about today. With the victory of Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the last elections, there are fears that anti-Western and anti-European rhetorics will flourish, and that actions will be taken against pro-Western movements and minority groups in Turkey, in particular the LGBT community. To address these topics, we have a world-class panel with us today, with extremely experienced experts that I will now introduce. Gökçe Okandan, you're an expert in cultural policies, a professor in cultural management. You have extensive research and advisory experience with various Turkish and international institutions. Welcome, Gökçe. Manipur Nagi, you are the director of the Goethe Institute in Istanbul, and you have led the Goethe Institute Strategy Department in the past, among other positions in the institute. Recep Tuna, you are advisor at the Dutch Consulate in Istanbul. You have also been based in Izmir for several years, and you have extensive experience of cultural relations between Turkey and Europe. We will also listen to Selen Akçali, manager at İKSV, the Istanbul Foundations for Arts and Culture. She has a PhD from Boğaziçi University and 20 years of experience in the field of cultural relations and cultural policy. So I would like to start with general questions about lessons learned, my dear guests. What, in your view, can we learn from past and ongoing cultural relations between EU and Turkish partners? I would like to address the first question to Recep. You're now working at the General Consulate of the Netherlands in Istanbul. Could you please tell our audience who you are and how your various roles in Turkish-EU cultural relations have been and what you have learned over the years?
Hi, thank you very much for this nice introduction, Damien. This is Recep Tuna speaking. I define my profession as cultural manager. I studied economics, actually, at Yıldız Teknik University in Istanbul. I became a volunteer for a non-governmental organization during my studies called Arı Movement. After my graduation, I also started my professional career in the civil society sector through Arı Movement. And with Arı Movement, we were focusing on the membership process of Turkey to European Union. And we were trying to encourage women and youth participation in political and social lives. We were also trying to promote the values of participatory democracy, such as rule of law, transparency, accountability, local governance. And we were, as Arı Movement, we were involved in several projects supported by European Union Turkey delegation. For example, we were active in several Anatolian cities in providing human rights trainings for women and also problem-solving methodologies with the involvement of youth in their local contexts. And yeah, I consider that period of 2.5 years as like on the field training, nationally and internationally engaged way. Then after a while, I joined the team of the Consulate General of the Netherlands in Istanbul, and I was mainly working for civil society support programs and cultural affairs. And after 12 years, I decided to move to Izmir. And when I started my new life in Izmir, I got involved in Space of Culture project, which Goethe Institute is taking the lead, but Consul General of the Netherlands, the Swedish Consulate in Istanbul, and Institut Français, together with Istanbul Foundation for Culture and Arts, and Anadolu Kültür as a consortium partner implementing in various cities in Turkey. So it is also a European collaboration with the involvement of Turkish leading civil society organizations. And during that period, I was also involved in artist in residency project, again supported by European Union together with Turkish Republic. And that project aimed at contributing to the relations between public sectors and civil society through culture and arts. There was back then also Be Mobile Create Together project, which was mainly executed from Istanbul, but in various cities of Anatolia as well. So when I look back all these experiences through projects, I can say that sometimes relations are warmed up, sometimes they cool down, but there is a continuity in the relations. Political atmosphere is very important in that, but academic and civil society relations are always ahead of the politics. And what I learned during this process is that sustainability is important, but in the time of difficult conditions, resilience is also an important term. And resilience is needed not only during the political difficulties or hardships, but also during the global crisis like the pandemic we had. Or in the future, we may have bigger problems related to the climate crisis or regional migration issues.
Thanks so much, Recep, for summarizing such a rich career and already sharing some thoughts in terms of lessons learned. I would like to turn now to Gökçe. You have also followed the evolution of the cultural landscape in Turkey and the relations with European partners. What are your main takeaways from these 20 years or so, Gökçe?
Damien, thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity for being with my colleagues on this session. It was a nice feeling listening to Recep because a lot of things have resonated, which also triggered my career. I started as a management scholar. I'm coming from management background, and I started my PhD studies in 2003. From then on, because my PhD was on the corporate support of arts in management, from then on, around 20 years, as you have already mentioned, I was able to witness the development in our sector. By our sector, I mean it is cultural and creative industries in Turkey is actually a sector where you see a lot of solidarity because of the challenges of the artists and the cultural and arts institutions are facing. So because of that, I am considering all of you as my colleagues. It was never the time of competition. It was always an urge for collaboration at stake. So in the early 2000s, the vibe was towards Europe. And when I started to enter this circle, it was also very much supported by civil society. because as you know, Turkey has experienced in 1980 a military coup, and the military coup was a cut in the representation of civil society in Turkey. And after the Habitat conference in Istanbul, civil society has emerged in the late 90s together to produce together. At that point, I see the example Recep has given a very important example, because our movement has had also political engagement, but also with civil society and corporate sector. In the beginning of 2000, we were also seeing that corporate actors were interested in culture and arts, and I can see they have also invested towards it. So it was my PhD also, like Sabancı has opened the museum, and İKSV Istanbul Foundation for Culture and Arts, an institution over at that time maybe 40 years, 30 years, they have made different collaboration with corporations, and there was this vibe. And in 2005, we witnessed for the first time a civil initiative has applied for European Cultural Capital, representative of Istanbul. It was also very strong and at that time very amiable collaboration, because one of the main stakeholders, the municipality, was represented by the right now ruling party. So although the political standing point was different, there was a collaboration for Istanbul. And this collaboration has emerged by civil actors, and it has been at that time supported by the municipality. But by the time in 2009, this coalition, let's say, has taken some backsteps, because Turkey has introduced different kind of civil society actors. So we have experienced a kind of wave where civil society has also polarized. The representation of right-wing civil society institutions were also at stage, and they have been encouraged. So the democratic voicing of the general understanding of civil society has been again discussed. So during that time, because I was in academia, I was at Istanbul Bilgi University, also happened to be a part of European projects, mobility programs, for instance, Erasmus, that we have used for different collaboration. And we have really experienced very strong links, not only collegial links that has also led to guide our graduate students, for instance, to pursue their degrees abroad, and also raise the level of our intellectual and academic conversation to a different point. So Erasmus programs for sure have been influenced by the state. One issue was security issue, because of the security problems in Turkey after the second military coup, after 15th of July. A lot of partners have withdrawn after their notice of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the second issue was transparency in the budgets of Turkish authorities. After audits, some budgets have been cut, and it was a marvelous opportunity for us. But still, with the solidarity of our European friends, we have continued these programs. So the lessons learned is very much related with the suggestions of Recep about resilience. And this resilience have emerged most of the time on the individual collaboration. So people who were actors of this environment have collaborated and volunteered for the ecosystem. And the other thing is actually it is an interdisciplinary field, although it is very much focused. Culture and policy, management, strategy, entrepreneurial efforts, social entrepreneurial efforts. So the lessons learned was Turkey has adapted to new trends and make use of different trends throughout this last 20 years. For instance, entrepreneurship was one issue. Although we lack the frame for the non-profit, not-for-profit organization in Turkey, there were a lot of, platform institutions emerged in the representation of non-governmental organizations. So it is a learning ecosystem. And if the relations are fruitful, the learnings are becoming meaningful.
Great. I like this last formulation. It's really, really nice branding. Keep it for maybe a future project. Thank you so much, Gökçe, to give this historical depth of, the current context. I think it's really, really precious. You mentioned CCI, culture and creative industries. You mentioned polarization, evolution, the role of private sector. You repeated resilience, but also spoke of solidarity. So thank you. These are the key words I noted down. Mani, as director of the Goethe Institute in Istanbul, you manage German initiatives as well as European initiatives. For instance, by cooperating with partners from the UNIC network, the network of European cultural institutes. What are the guiding principles that you have learned to use when working with Turkish and European partners?
Yeah, thank you so much, Damien, for inviting me, not only as a contributor, but also, and Gökçe was saying, when she was talking about the cultural and civil society sector as a learning ecosystem, I consider myself also like as a learning participant. So it was very impressive to listen to you, dear Gökçe and dear Recep. And this leads maybe already directly to your question, Damien, when you ask what are guiding principles. I think, first of all, learning. Also me working for the Goethe Institute as an individual, I consider myself also in my function, first of all, as a learning person and somebody who listens, who tries to understand the environment, and based on that, on like individual exchange on databases, to develop based on that active programs to contribute, at least, let's say, with our European and international partners to this mentioned learning ecosystem. So this is maybe one principle is kind of, let's put it as a buzzword, maybe active listening, let's say. That's one point.
Yeah.
And the second part, I would say, art and culture, that's the beauty about it. It is nice, it is enjoyable, but it is also important for us that culture and arts, in our understanding, is also highly political. So it's needs orientated. It is a seismograph for social, economical, people-to-people developments, and art and culture addresses these topics. So the second principle, maybe I would like to mention here, it's kind of a needs orientation for impact, that it's impact driven. That is also very important in my understanding. And the third one, just not to be too long, but I think, and this is maybe the most difficult part, is to stay constantly open and curious. Like always, let yourself surprise, get inspired, and then it's your role as an enabler, like to make something out of it.
Wow, this is very strong. It's very concise, but these principles, I think, carry a lot of ambition, but also responsibilities, and together with humilities. And we recognized not only the institutional, but also, I would say, personal style, Mani. So thank you for this. I'm sure it will resonate with our colleagues here in the round table. Okay, so now that we have kind of set the scene about, your take and your experience and the key lessons that you have accumulated over the years, I would like perhaps to go deeper into some experiences, to also share your knowledge and your know-how for our wider audiences. on certain initiatives that have been the sources of learning. So perhaps, Recep, I would like to invite you to tell us a bit more about what you have learned from specific projects. I'm sure you have plenty of fantastic experiences to mention here.
Because I'm an economist and I'm an expert on budget management, event management, I would like to elaborate more from the management side of the international collaboration projects, specifically with a focus on the European ones. So here it is important to mention one very attractive methodology, design thinking. So I apply always the principles of design thinking in any of the projects where you have various facilities with different scope, but my approach is always analytical. So I use what I have learned from business administration lessons or event management experience through projects in these European collaboration projects. First important step is the preparation phase, definition of the tasks and distribution of the responsibilities among the team. This is really important. And from A to Z, open communication is the key for success. So there are people who are involved in the project, no matter if they are managing the project or they are invited artists to participate or they are the audience. Always communication channels should be encouraging for expressions. And also maybe there are also questionnaires that have to be conducted during the implementation of the projects, but you can also go beyond this and encourage your team to have direct contact with various parties involved in the projects. EU funding guidelines are very detailed and sometimes more complicated than needed. We all know that. So there has to be a very dedicated coordinator to follow all the financial phases and the implementation steps. Mm-hmm. My humble advice, you cannot write this in the requirements of the job opening, but you have to find a control freak as a coordinator. Because once you lose one side of the reporting, then it becomes a mess. So a very dedicated person who is motivated also about the objectives of this collaboration should be the leading person. When we come to the Turkish structure, the governance system in Turkey is very much centralized. When you are going to the different provinces of the country, you still need the support from the central government, especially the ministries, when it is in their authority. Because when you go to the provincial directorates, if they don't know you, your organization, then you have to go through a security check which takes weeks, and you are there for a limited time. And if you have to have the support of public institutions in the local level, it will complicate your purposes there. That's why I refer to the preparation phase at the very beginning of the project, and when necessary to ask for the support of the central government and ministries. There are also municipalities in the districts, in the provinces. Relations with them are more relaxed and flexible when compared to the provincial directorates of central government. But then you have to find a balance in your relations with different organizations in the same province. academy, universities play a crucial role in this as well, because the involvement of youth is one of the main aims of these European collaborations.
Very, very interesting. So, Mani and Gökçe, how would you react to the examples and the lessons learned presented by Recep? Do you agree? Would you emphasize the same things? How does it resonate with your own experience?
Most of the things in this quite small ecosystem we have experienced together. I am totally with Recep in some projects. Even I remember our talks for Daire, for including your Erasmus mobility to Daire for internship and that kind of very technical stuff. It is also very much linked to my experience as professor of cultural management throughout the 20 years, all the people I have educated and who are right now actively involved in our sector, not only in Turkey, also through migration in different points in Europe. The cultural managers diaspora to Europe. So in many European countries, in cities, they are also present and they are in close collaboration with their international partners. I see that it's a very crucial point for establishing a very healthy and fruitful relationship with different European countries. Recep has mentioned about design thinking. When we were introduced to collaborate with unique partners, most of them have specific concentrations in the beginning of 2000s or mid of 2000s. For instance, for Dutch consulate, I would definitely say design. If there is anything design related in Turkey, then we would consult them and take their perspectives on that. For Goethe Institute, it was for years literature. So right now it has broadened. There is different representation as well. I would like to mention the efforts of British Council here because I worked very closely with them in the topic of entrepreneurship in their program of creative economy that they have launched in the mid of 2000. And we were very lucky because our friends, our partner from different projects, Esra Aysun was in charge of the program at that time. Cansu Ataman, our colleague, has finished a program in the UK about creative economy and entrepreneurship and has launched a program in Istanbul. Through their support, through their entrepreneurship and economy and creative hubs support, there was also very close collaboration between entrepreneurial ecosystem and cultural and creative industry. So spaces of culture, as Recep has mentioned, plays also in a very important role. That this was a kind of introduction to go beyond the autonomy of Istanbul. So Istanbul was always a meeting point for spaces of culture, but the actors were coming from different cities, and we had the opportunity for empowering them in that sense. So these examples, I think, pretty much resonate with the professional sides because we were expecting the actors to become more professional on the cultural management to continue their involvement in the sector.
I remember when we prepared the session, you mentioned how the concept of creative economy and the approach was brought to Turkey, and you said it was a very important step. Mani, Yogo.
I think many important points were already mentioned, and also the specific projects and programs. Both of you mentioned Spaces of Culture. Spaces of Culture, maybe if you allow me 2 sentences about that. It's a program which was designed mainly by Osman Kavala, who is since more than 4 years unjustifiably in prison. And he designed this program together, or he brought people together among us, the Goethe Institute, and other European partners as the Dutch Cultural Institute, the Dutch Embassy, Consulate, and also the French Institute. The overall goal of this program was empowerment. Götze mentioned that, and specifically outside of the urban elite areas, but empowering, supporting the independent cultural civil society. And with this program, mainly in Izmir, in Gaziantep, in Diyarbakir. So one of the learnings from this program, now we are in the 5th year, and it's more needed than ever. I think what is like huge learning, also according to the evaluations we have, is networking. That we have an active, vibrant network of independent cultural actors. That's like one main learning for us. And the other one, and I'm sure also Recep, you were involved in this program also with different hats, let's say, now as representative of the Dutch consulate, is also mobility within Turkey, but also towards Europe. That is like key. So for the next 2 years, for example, in Spaces of Culture, our priority is mobility and like to create a platform for exchange and cooperation and co-creation, especially also with European equivalents, let's say, or European partners. So this is like really in the focus, and for that there are travels planned to the Netherlands, to Sweden, to Germany, to France, and so on. So these are the things. And just to give you some evidence for what I'm saying on this example and why networking is so important, there was this terrible earthquake beginning of the year in February. And immediately we sat together with our European partners and were wondering, how can we react? How can we contribute as cultural and educational institutions to that? And luckily, we had this vibrant and lively network, which we consulted. And based on this expertise, we were able at least to design some small programs contributing at least a bit to this terrible situation. So this means like sustainable networks are key are like a key learning in my understanding.
Well, thanks, Mani. Connecting the dots between what Recep and Gökçe said earlier, also we imagine that design thinking probably played a role in designing rapid response as well. Gökçe, you had other points to make, so maybe you would like to come back to what you were saying.
The general thing is about this launch of creative economy that you have mentioned after the naming the territory, cultural and creative industries. What does that mean in Turkey for Turkish circumstances, and how to reflect it to the policy making level was one of our issues. And I think I have personally contributed to the 11th strategic plan of Turkish Republic, and many of our friends who have been invited to the commissions have contributed. If there are some mechanisms for following up, for accountability and transparency in this policy making atmosphere, then we can really follow what can be the outcome of these suggestions that has been made in the strategic plan.
I would like now to make you listen a statement by Selen Aceli, project manager at İKSV, who could not be with us today because she's organizing roundtables all around Turkey at the moment. But here is what she says about the Ortaklaşa programs that İKSV is implementing with the support of the EU.
Ortaklaşa has started in the beginning of this year, 2023. And Ortaklaşa is a direct grant from the European Commission to İKSV with a budget of 3 million euro, and it will last 3 years. The action aims to promote collaboration and cooperation between civil society organizations operating in the field of arts and culture and local authorities, namely municipalities. From our past researches and reports, we know that civil actors cannot participate in the local cultural policy-making processes. So we seek to develop civil involvement in policy making. We aim to create real relationships and collaborations between municipalities and civil society organizations. We believe that the participation of civil actors to the strategic planning for cultural policy constitutes one of the most important challenges to overcome for a democratic, pluralistic, cultural, artistic life in a city. So in order to reach these objectives, we have 3 programs. We have a dialogue program, we have a sub-grant program with a budget of 1.3 million euro, and we have a capacity building program designed for cultural professionals. And the project covers the entire Turkey. We have regional roundtables, we have search conferences, networking events, and the sub-grant program is open to all civil society organizations operating in the field of arts and culture and to municipalities.
Right.
In this project, we cooperate with UNIC, European Union National Institutes for Culture. We collaborate with Ankara and Istanbul clusters. And UNIC will mostly contribute to our capacity building program by providing experts, specialists, academics. And what we want to do, for example, at the end of 2023, we will have a workshop together designed with UNIC. We would like to share some best practices from European Union countries. For example, ST, where local civil society cooperation was quite inspiring. We will invite them. For example, we think of Lille, the city of Lille in France. We would like to have some cities from European to share their best practice. If they have a good civil society, local authorities, cooperation, if they have a model, we would like to share this experience in Turkey with civil society and local authorities.
What about best practices from Turkey? Are you also bring them on the table?
We will produce, I hope, this best practice, because our first call for proposals is now open, and it will be closed in July 12. So we will start to receive the project proposals, and the first projects will start in October. And I hope we will have some best practices from these projects, because in the sub-grant program, CSOs has to have partnerships with local authorities. This is mandatory.
So what do you think? Do you agree with the importance of dialogue on cultural policy at local level in cities and with municipalities? You mentioned earlier the importance of central government, but I would like to maybe listen to you on the local level.
When Gökçe mentioned the polarization in the society, it is also in every aspects of the governance and the social structure and also cultural structure in the country. For example, contemporary arts are mainly supported by the private companies owned by rich families in Turkey. But traditional arts and culture are mainly supported by the central government. And when it comes to the local level, we have the appointed governors from the central government and the elected mayors. If the ruling party is also strong in the local level and the mayors are from the ruling party, you have a strong representation of one part of the society. But if the mayors are from the opposition part of the society, then there is a room for more colorful relationship. Sometimes there is a conflict, sometimes there is a pressure in political and social levels. So you never have a dull, boring moment in this country. You have all the opportunities to enjoy yourself, sometimes with disappointment, sometimes with excitement. And municipalities have various sources, but it's not that sufficient for for a full execution of cultural policies. And development of cultural policy, although there we saw some good examples of participatory approach, still it is under the authority of the ruling ones. But yeah, I mean, there is no room to be pessimistic because I'm a vulnerable optimist all the time. So I think everything will be fine at the end, but we need to work more and with a full dedication. When the society is polarized and when you approach the life from different perspectives, it's not always very easy to reconcile. But still, if we want to live in this country together, then we find rooms for collaboration. And the structure of municipality also serve for this purpose because they have the council next to the mayors. So their different voices can be raised. And no matter if you are from the ruling part or the opposition part, you have some platforms to raise your voice.
Thank you so much, Recep, for zooming in these complex spaces at local level. I think that was extremely interesting and also very, very poetically sometimes expressed. So thank you so much. Who else would like to react to this idea of the importance of local level? Yes, Gökçe.
If I may, I would like to add also to support Recep's point that he has mentioned about resilience and sustainability at the very beginning. This is a kind of reaction that we are able to show after 15 years. So in 2009, Invisible Cities project with Anadolu Kültür has supported local cultural policy making in Kars, Çanakkale, and Antakya. And then in 2010, the European Cultural Capital, all Istanbul municipalities, 34 of them, have got a training on strategic management and participatory methodology. So these kind of examples, I don't want to go into details, has also brought in specific cities this kind of, muscle that has strengthened this kind of muscle for including different stakeholders and caring for diversity. Just checking this point that is maybe not necessarily always considered as a part of to-dos. So that is actually my contribution, because in order to establish that kind of democratic response, you also need time, and in order to educate people and have them show their reactions without hesitation.
Thanks, Gökçe, for these complementary points. Annie?
Yeah, I would fully subscribe to that, what you said, and also Selen. I think the point is a kind of a lack of, let's say, cultural infrastructure on a local level. And I think that's the right point, in my understanding, how to do it on a local municipality level to provide this vibrant ecosystem and opportunity to flourish, let's say, in a way. And like what we are observing or what our partners are describing, and also what we see on the numbers of applications we receive, for example, in the frame of our EU-funded project Culture Civic, we see that, for example, there's shrinking spaces. Like literally, there's no space for, let's say, contemporary art. Not no space, but kind of limited space in some regions. And I think to provide this space, like literal physical space, where contemporary art, is it performance, is it theater, is it films or literature discussions, I think this is like one main part or like one important component, let's say, for a lively cultural infrastructure. Therefore, this approach on a local level is very good. And the second part we are observing also, and this is also in my understanding, part of this package is like, co-production funds for independent collaborations, independent productions. And for example, with Culture Civic, the EU-funded projects I mentioned, which we are implementing with Anadolu Culture and the Istanbul Foundation for Arts and Cultures and European partners, shows the need for it. Because in total, we support 200 projects for, let's say, for example, for infrastructure projects for theaters, but also for project fundings. And for each call, we received more than 200 applications, let's say. And it's, for me, it's an indicator there is a need, and to put it positive, there's also a lot of creativity and energy, which is there, and I think this story also has to be told, that there is such a lively culture scene all over Turkey, and it needs the support it deserves. So I think, and that's why my understanding is, or my lesson learned, let's say, is that we as international European organizations, together with national partners, we should provide a platform where they can develop further.
All right. Very complimentary contributions from you three. So we're very, very lucky. We are reaching the end of this absolutely amazing roundtable. And, given the current situation in Turkey and in EU-Turkey relations, how do you see the potential of future cultural relations? And most importantly, perhaps, what would be your, key three recommendations to the Europeans and the Turkish partners to make sure that these relations continue to flourish?
The potential is very high, but the realization is limited. When I consider the relations, I make some distinction in the relation types. So like the collaborative efforts, let's say unique platforms. For example, we have Sound of Europe or European Cinema Week projects under unique structure. They are really effective and they are attracting an audience because it's a collaborative effort. But I also attach a great importance for the bilateral relations. As the Dutch consulate in Istanbul and the embassy in Ankara, we also contribute a lot to the bilateral cultural relations. We have a budget to present Dutch arts and culture in Turkey. But when we have artists in here for the festivals or specific projects, they develop their collaboration further, and Turkish arts and culture entrepreneurs or pioneers, let's say, or artists travel to the Netherlands. So this bilateral relation is important. And then I come to the issue of mobility, which also Mani mentioned. Mobility is very important. Unfortunately, these days we are experiencing visa crisis. There are many reasons for that, but my urgent recommendation to all sides is that this visa crisis should be solved immediately, because it has a deep impact in the relations. I don't know what kind of negotiations are going on behind the curtains, because we know the international politics as well. There is a security issue involved in the region. We are very much aware of that, but all the parties who have the authority in this very delicate issue have to find a solution immediately. And networking is very important, but also strategic networking is important. Networking should lead to a consequence of good relations, close relations between the people of different countries. We always have a love and hatred relation when it comes to the political level between Greece and Turkey. But people of both countries, we are all brothers and sisters all the time. I most of the time spend my holidays in Greece, and no matter it's a restaurant owner, tavern owner, or hotel staff, we all hug each other while we are saying farewell and till next time, you know. So this human to human touch is important, but then the borders should not be, let's say, become walls, strict walls or high walls between the countries. And when we talk about culture civic, it is also good to refer to maybe Creative Europe, because Turkey withdrew from Creative Europe many years ago, and now there are negotiations that Turkey will rejoin the program. It's not happened yet, but I think it's also related to the ongoing political discussions among the countries. And I will finalize it with this. Yeah, the elections have consequences in the social life in Turkey. But the president after the elections made it very clear that Turkey still has the intention to develop further relations with European Union. So it is always ups and downs in the internal politics, but when it comes to international politics, international relations, we are all dependent on each other. Geographically, we are bound to each other, and this will never change. So I want to be optimist about the future, and I think there will be again room for further collaboration.
Thanks so much, Recep, for this comprehensive overview and analysis of the prospects, and also a very personal take on things, and we appreciate that very much. Who's next? Gökçe?
Okay, I go. Yeah, Efaristo, Recep. Thanks for this note.
Paragalo.
So we are actually very used to this human side of these relations, and actually it is people who are shaping also the overall relations. So positive, constructive approaches play a very important role. The 3 points I would like to mention is about related to some problems, but I think there can be opportunities throughout these problems. One is the migration in Turkey, especially Syrian migration. And this is a huge topic that maybe the podcast series can address further. But we have seen in some projects, like in Spaces of Culture, through the participants of Antep, that there are amazing stories. I would like to mention the success of Nefes Music School, Ibrahim Müslümani in this case, how he has played a very important integrative part in the society, how he has contributed after the earthquake in the society. These are very important examples for overcoming the prejudices and the setbacks in the polarization discussion. The second point is a very unfortunate problem is that Turkey is experiencing a creative migration to European countries. So this has maybe started after Gezi movement, has strengthened through the military coup, and is happening also right now because of the changing political and economic circumstances. We know, especially in Germany and in the UK, so there was a diaspora in Turkish diaspora, but this is a different representation. They call themselves new wave of migration. They are not directly linked with the previous diaspora. They are identifying themselves as world citizens. Most of them are fluent in English. Most of them are following the trends. They try to pursue their career in Germany, but also in their environment, if they are considered as representative of policy making, if they're integrated in some kind of solutions, I'm sure they can contribute a great deal. And we are also seeing some examples in German local policy scene. The final thing is about I would like to address again the notion of mobility. It is very, very important for us. In cultural policy studies, we have tried to find solution for the artistic representation for the mobility issues. Because of the lack of social security system in the country, the necessary documentation and paperwork cannot be presented as representation of the artist. So in that regard, I consider 2005 Convention of UNESCO a very important tool. The Convention on Promotion and Protection of Cultural Diversity. I am a supporter of this convention as a fellow of German Commission of UNESCO and as a member of Turkish Commission. So Turkey has ratified the convention in 2017. So I think also transnational conventions and networking groups and support groups are also problem solvers for this very emergent problems in our immediate experience.
All right, Gökçe, thank you so much for bringing new light on the future and emphasizing the importance of mobility. Mani, Yogo.
Thing maybe to make everything possible you said now, my recommendation is very easy but very important. Maybe need more resources, or at least keep the resources as we have them for cultural and educational and people-to-people contact. Why? Because especially in these times lately, at least after the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and for legitimate reason, the budgets for security and defense were increased. But I think complementary, we should also keep up the people, we should invest also on a long term in the people-to-people contact, and art and cultural exchange can heavily contribute to that, because it can be a channel for communication, let's say, it is a tool for communication to keep the communication going on a personal level or on a hugging level, as Recep said, but also to stay in touch, let's say, in a way, even, and as it is in long relationships, sometimes it's a bit difficult, but then you need to get over it. And via art and culture, you have the opportunity to stay in touch, let's say, and also to come closer again in better times. So that's why I think we should, on a long term, invest in this field, just to keep the communication going. And as you also said, Damien, at the very beginning, it also comes with a lot of responsibility. Gökçe also mentioned some examples of the new waivers now, but our societies, Germany and Turkey, are like the closest outside of Europe, let's say, not only in terms of numbers, but also culturally. And of course, we don't agree on both sides on everything, but it's important that we keep on talking to each other, trying to understand to each other. And I think both sides at the end will very much benefit out of this. And with that, I couldn't find as poetic words as Recep, but I think that's why that we are able to hug each other at one point. Again, it doesn't matter with whom. I think it's important to invest in this field.
Certainly as stimulating, Mani, so you can be sure of that. Okay, I would like to share Selen's answer with you when I asked her to give us 3 tips to Europeans working in the cultural field in Turkey, and I will then close the roundtable.
I think we need to continue to develop programs together. I think it's very important to listen, to try to understand and to find solutions together, because we have been in a very good relationship with EU delegation in Ankara, and they ask us about the actual artistic and cultural scene in Turkey. We are in constant contact, but for this Ortaklaşa project, we work together, we design together the project idea. So I think the important thing, they must see the needs of the cultural and artistic scene in Turkey. So after this need assessment, I think new programs must be designed.
Yeah.
For example, as for this Culture Civic, really, small actors needs financing because they don't have enough financing for their projects.
Yeah.
It was a very useful grant program. So maybe we must continue to support this type of, independent culture and art actors. In these recent programs, different European Union countries collaborated to design these programs. I think it creates a synergy really, and every country has a different point of view, and different actors from these countries can contribute in a different ways in Turkish culture and art scene. So I think this synergy must continue, and we always have, we are in constant contact with them. I think it's a very good partnership model, not only with İKSV, they also collaborate with different institutions, for example, like Anadolu Kültür, and we have this local, knowledge and know-how and data, and they have different, point of views and experiences from, their specific country. So I think this is the best model which works very well.
Thank you all for being with us today. I think it has been a fantastic roundtable. I feel I learned a lot about Turkey-EU cultural relations, and I'm sure some of the wisdom you have shared with us today will be well appreciated by our audience in Turkey, but also in the EU and in other parts of the world. Teşekkürler, iyi akşamlar, thanks very much, and all the best.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Composing Trust podcast by Culture Solutions. If you liked it, you can subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platforms and contact us at culturesolutions.eu.